What if I told you that Germany's history is far more complex than most people realize? A story of empires rising and falling, scientific revolutions, and political upheavals that shaped the entire world. From the Holy Roman Empire to the industrial powerhouse of today, Germany's past is filled with fascinating connections to the present. But did you know that Germany, as we know it, didn't even exist as a unified country until the late 19th century? Before that, it was a patchwork of kingdoms, duchies, and city-states, each with its own identity. How did they come together? And what forces shaped the land that would become one of the most powerful nations in modern history? Prepare to uncover the truth behind Germany's rise, the secrets of its lost empires, and the legacies that still shape our world today. But to truly understand Germany's history, we must go back to where it all began. A time before borders, when mighty tribes roamed the land and set the stage for the story that follows. Long before Germany was a country, it was a land of forests, rivers, and fiercely independent tribes. The Romans called them Germanic peoples. But these tribes had no single identity. They were warriors, traders, and settlers, each with unique traditions. But what made them so powerful that even the mighty Roman Empire struggled to conquer them? In 9 AD, one of the most legendary battles in history unfolded deep in the Teutoburg forest. A Germanic chieftain named Arminius led an alliance of tribes against 3 Roman legions. The result? A stunning defeat that shook Rome to its core and forced them to abandon their expansion into Germania. This victory wasn't just a battle, it was the moment that defined the spirit of resistance among the Germanic people. But while Rome never fully conquered Germania, they left behind something just as powerful: knowledge, trade, and cultural influence. Roman roads, weapons, and even language shaped the tribes over time, blending elements of the empire into Germanic life. Yet, as these tribes evolved, they didn't remain scattered forever. In the centuries that followed, some would rise to power, forging kingdoms that would reshape European history. But among them, one would emerge as the foundation of what we now call Germany. Who were they? And how did they build an empire that would dominate Europe for nearly 1,000 years? What if I told you that the first empire linked to Germany was neither holy, nor Roman, nor even a true empire? The Holy Roman Empire, founded in 800 AD, became a vast and complex political entity that ruled over much of Central Europe. But how did it come to be, and why did it last for over 1,000 years? It all started with Charlemagne, the king of the Franks. In the year 800, Pope Leo III crowned him Emperor of the Romans, reviving the idea of a unified European empire. But instead of a centralized kingdom, the Holy Roman Empire became a patchwork of hundreds of independent states, all ruled under the emperor's authority, at least in theory. For centuries, Germany wasn't a single country but a collection of duchies, kingdoms, and principalities under the empire's rule. Powerful families like the Habsburgs shaped its destiny, engaging in wars, alliances, and political intrigue. The empire saw incredible achievements in art, science, and philosophy, laying the groundwork for modern Europe. But its decentralized nature would eventually become its greatest weakness. As the centuries passed, new ideas began to challenge the empire's rule. The Protestant Reformation, led by Martin Luther in the 16th century, would ignite religious wars and shatter the unity of the empire. But the biggest turning point was yet to come, a war so devastating it would leave Germany in ruins for generations. Imagine a war so devastating that it wiped out nearly 1/3 of Germany's population. A war not just about land, but about religion, politics, and survival. This was the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, one of the deadliest conflicts in European history. But how did it start, and why did it leave Germany in ruins for generations? It all began in 1618, when Protestant and Catholic tensions boiled over in the Holy Roman Empire. The famous defenestration of Prague, where Protestant nobles threw Catholic officials out of a window, sparked a brutal conflict that drew in nearly every major European power. Germany became the battleground where foreign armies clashed, looted, and burned entire cities to the ground. The destruction was unimaginable. Villages were wiped off the map, crops were burned, and famine and disease spread like wildfire. Some regions saw their populations reduced by 50% or more. By the time the war ended in 1648 with the Peace of Westphalia, Germany was fragmented, weak, and divided into hundreds of tiny states. But this war did more than just destroy, it reshaped Europe's political landscape. It marked the beginning of modern diplomacy, as nations began negotiating peace instead of waging endless wars. However, Germany's divisions would persist, delaying its path to unification for centuries. Yet, amidst the ashes of destruction, a new force was rising. A kingdom that would eventually lead Germany to greatness. But could this new power succeed where the Holy Roman Empire had failed? Germany had been broken, divided, and weak for centuries. But one state would change everything. Prussia, a kingdom built on discipline, military might, and ruthless efficiency. But how did this small kingdom become the dominant force that would eventually unify Germany? Prussia's rise began under Frederick William, the Great Elector, who turned his land into a militarized powerhouse in the 17th century. But it was his descendant, Frederick the Great, 1740 to 1786, who truly transformed Prussia into a European superpower. With a combination of brilliant military tactics and political cunning, he expanded Prussia's territory, defeated larger enemies, and made the world take notice. Prussia's army became legendary, highly trained, disciplined, and one of the most feared forces in Europe. It wasn't the biggest, but it was the best organized. And under Otto von Bismarck, Prussia would finally accomplish what had eluded German leaders for centuries: unification. But how do you unite a land fragmented for over 1,000 years? Through diplomacy? Through war? Or both? As Prussia grew stronger, its leaders knew that the time had come to forge a single German state, by any means necessary. What does it take to unite a nation that had been divided for centuries? For Otto von Bismarck, the answer was simple: blood and iron. Bismarck was a master strategist, a political genius who understood that Germany could only be united through war, diplomacy, and sheer force of will. As Prussia's prime minister, he led a series of wars that would change history. First, he defeated Denmark in 1864, securing German-speaking territories. Then, in 1866, he crushed Austria in the Austro-Prussian War, proving that Prussia, not Austria, would lead the German unification. But there was one last obstacle: France. In 1870, Bismarck provoked war with Napoleon III, leading to the Franco-Prussian War. The conflict was swift and brutal. Within months, Prussia defeated France, captured Napoleon III, and marched triumphantly into Paris. The victory was the final step toward German unification. On January 18, 1871, inside the grand halls of the Palace of Versailles, Bismarck proclaimed the birth of the German Empire. For the first time in history, Germany was a single, unified nation. But this new empire was not built on peace. It was built on war, ambition, and a thirst for power. And as Germany rose, so too did the tensions that would eventually lead to the most devastating war the world had ever seen. Germany had finally become a global power. Its industry was booming, its military was unmatched, and its empire stretched across the world. But power breeds conflict, and in 1914, a single gunshot would plunge Germany, and the world, into chaos. It all began with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary. Germany, allied with Austria, found itself locked in a brutal war against Britain, France, Russia, and later, the United States. What was supposed to be a quick conflict turned into a nightmare of trenches, gas attacks, and endless slaughter. By 1918, Germany was exhausted. The economy had collapsed, soldiers were starving, and the people were demanding change. The Kaiser abdicated, and the German Empire fell, replaced by the Weimar Republic. But peace was an illusion. The Treaty of Versailles humiliated Germany, imposing crushing debts and territorial losses. Resentment festered. The wounds of World War I would never fully heal. Instead, they would give rise to an even darker chapter in history, one that would redefine the world forever. The German Empire was gone. In its place stood the Weimar Republic, 1919 to 1933, a fragile democracy born out of war, economic ruin, and political chaos. But could Germany, a nation used to monarchy and military rule, truly embrace democracy? From the beginning, the Weimar Republic faced enormous challenges. The Treaty of Versailles had left Germany humiliated, forced to pay crushing reparations and stripped of its territories. Hyperinflation soon followed, turning money into worthless paper. A loaf of bread that cost 1 mark in 1921 skyrocketed to 200 billion marks by late 1923. People burned cash for heat, and savings vanished overnight. Amidst this chaos, radical movements gained momentum. Communists wanted a Soviet-style revolution, while nationalists and former soldiers blamed the government for Germany's defeat. Street fights between rival political factions became common, turning German cities into battlefields. But then came the Golden Twenties, a brief period of economic recovery and cultural boom. Berlin became a hub of art, music, and progressive ideas. However, beneath the surface, resentment still simmered. The Great Depression of 1929 shattered this fragile stability, sending millions into unemployment and plunging Germany back into despair. With the nation desperate for a savior, a charismatic but dangerous figure emerged, one who promised to restore Germany's greatness. But at what cost? How does a failed artist, a man once living in homeless shelters, rise to command one of the most powerful nations in history? How does an entire country, known for its culture and intellect, fall under the spell of a leader who would bring unparalleled destruction? The rise of Adolf Hitler is a tale of manipulation, desperation, and the terrifying power of propaganda. Germany in the 1920s was a nation in crisis. The humiliations of the Treaty of Versailles had left the country economically crippled, politically fractured, and socially volatile. Inflation was so severe that people carried wheelbarrows of money just to buy a loaf of bread. The democratic Weimar Republic, struggling to hold the country together, was distrusted by the people, who saw it as weak and ineffective. Chaos reigned, and in chaos, dictators rise. Enter Adolf Hitler, a former soldier from World War I. He had witnessed firsthand Germany's defeat and the humiliation that followed. He was filled with rage and resentment, convinced that Germany had been betrayed from within. When he joined the National Socialist German Workers' Party, Nazi Party, he quickly rose through its ranks, using fiery speeches to channel the anger of the masses. He blamed Germany's suffering on the Treaty of Versailles, corrupt politicians, and groups he falsely accused of conspiring against the nation. His message? That Germany had been stabbed in the back and only a strong leader, himself, could restore its glory. Hitler's words were dangerous, but they were effective. The Great Depression of 1929 hit Germany harder than most nations, leading to mass unemployment and hopelessness. People were desperate for a savior, someone who could lead them out of the darkness. And Hitler promised just that. By 1933, he had done the impossible. The man who had once been dismissed as a fringe extremist was now Chancellor of Germany. But democracy would not last long under his rule. Within months, he abolished free speech, crushed opposition, and seized absolute power. The Reichstag fire gave him an excuse to pass the Enabling Act, giving him dictatorial control. The Weimar Republic was dead. Germany was now under totalitarian rule. Using a terrifying mix of propaganda and terror, Hitler turned Germany into a machine of war and oppression. His Minister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, flooded newspapers, radio, and films with messages glorifying the Nazi regime. Schools indoctrinated children, books were burned, and opposition was silenced through the Gestapo, the Nazi secret police. The economy appeared to recover, jobs returned, industry boomed, but at a terrible cost. Dissenters vanished. Jews, political opponents, and other minorities became targets of persecution. The first concentration camps were built, and in secret, Hitler prepared Germany for war. The world watched, some in fear, others in denial. But soon, Hitler's ambitions would ignite the deadliest conflict in human history. The storm was coming, and no nation would be spared. September 1, 1939, Germany invades Poland. Within days, Britain and France declared war. World War II had begun. But this was no ordinary war. It was a war of expansion, ideology, and total destruction. Germany's early victories were astonishing. Using blitzkrieg, or lightning war, German forces swept through Europe in mere months. Poland fell, then Denmark and Norway, followed by the Low Countries and France. By mid-1940, Nazi Germany controlled almost all of Western Europe. But Hitler wasn't satisfied. He turned east, launching Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. This was his greatest mistake. The brutal Russian winter and fierce Soviet resistance turned the tide of war. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 brought the United States into the conflict. The balance of power had shifted. As Allied forces pushed back, Hitler's desperation grew. In his madness, he intensified the horrors of the Holocaust, leading to the systematic murder of 6 million Jews and millions of others. But Germany's downfall was near. With Soviet troops closing in from the east and the Western Allies landing in Normandy on D-Day, June 6, 1944, Germany was trapped. The Reich crumbled, and on April 30, 1945, Hitler committed suicide in his bunker. A week later, Germany surrendered. But what came next would be just as defining. Germany was about to be torn apart. Germany lay in ruins. Cities were rubble, millions were dead, and the world was reshaped. But the war was over, or was it? With the Nazis defeated, the victorious Allies, the United States, the Soviet Union, Britain, and France, took control of Germany. But their unity didn't last long. As the Cold War began, tensions rose between the Soviet-controlled East and the Western powers. The result? Germany was split in two. In 1949, two new nations were born: West Germany, Federal Republic of Germany, backed by the US and its allies. East Germany, German Democratic Republic, controlled by the Soviet Union. Berlin, the capital, was also divided. Then, in 1961, the unthinkable happened. The Berlin Wall was built. A concrete and barbed wire symbol of the Cold War, it physically and ideologically separated families, friends, and an entire nation for nearly 3 decades. But even behind the wall, resistance never faded. And eventually, a wave of change would sweep across Europe, bringing one of the most shocking moments in modern history. November 9, 1989. The world watched in disbelief as thousands of East Berliners flooded the streets, tearing down the Berlin Wall with their own hands. Decades of division, erased in a single night. But what led to this moment? Throughout the 1980s, cracks were forming in the Soviet Union's grip on Eastern Europe. Protests erupted in Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia. In East Germany, citizens demanded freedom, and the government could no longer hold back the tide. Then came the fateful press conference. An East German official mistakenly suggested that travel restrictions were lifted immediately. Within hours, thousands rushed to the border, overwhelming the guards. The wall that had stood for 28 years, dividing families and crushing dreams, was now nothing more than debris. Germany was finally on the path to reunification. And in 1990, after decades of separation, Germany became one nation again. But even as the country healed, challenges remained. How do you merge two completely different societies? How do you rebuild trust and economy? Germany had finally reclaimed its unity, but its journey was far from over. The Berlin Wall had fallen, and the world celebrated. But reunification was just the beginning of Germany's next great challenge. After nearly half a century of division, the two Germanys were vastly different. West Germany was a thriving democracy with a strong economy, while East Germany struggled under decades of economic stagnation and political oppression. On October 3, 1990, Germany officially reunified. But merging these two worlds was not easy. The economy of East Germany collapsed almost overnight, factories shut down, unemployment soared, and millions of East Germans fled west in search of better opportunities. The West German government had to pump billions of dollars into rebuilding the East, a process that would take decades. Socially, reunification also brought deep tensions. Many East Germans felt like second-class citizens, struggling to adapt to capitalism. Meanwhile, some West Germans resented the heavy financial burden of rebuilding the East. The differences in mentality, shaped by years of separation, created cultural gaps that still linger today. Despite these difficulties, Germany made remarkable progress. By the early 2000s, the country had stabilized, becoming the largest economy in Europe. Berlin, once divided by concrete and barbed wire, transformed into a global hub of culture, innovation, and diplomacy. But Germany's role on the world stage was only beginning to evolve. The country now faced a new question: how would it define itself in the modern world? If there's one country that defines the power and stability of the European Union, it's Germany. But how did a nation once feared for war become the economic and political leader of Europe? After World War II, Germany was at the center of Europe's reconstruction. But rather than pursuing domination, it chose cooperation. The formation of the European Coal and Steel Community, ECSC, in 1951, a precursor to the European Union, was a turning point. By binding its economy with France and other European nations, Germany ensured that another devastating war would be nearly impossible. Fast forward to today, and Germany is the economic engine of Europe. With its strong industrial sector, highly skilled workforce, and massive exports, it plays a crucial role in keeping the EU stable. It also serves as a key decision-maker in European politics, often mediating crises, from economic downturns to geopolitical conflicts. But Germany's leadership isn't without controversy. Some countries accuse it of exerting too much control over the EU's financial policies. The Greek debt crisis of the 2010s was a prime example. While Germany pushed for strict austerity measures, critics argued it was prioritizing its own economic interests over struggling nations. Still, Germany's influence in Europe is undeniable. But as global politics shift and new challenges emerge, will it maintain its leadership? Or will new powers rise to challenge its dominance? Today, Germany stands as one of the most powerful nations in the world, but its influence extends far beyond its borders. From shaping international policies to leading technological innovation, Germany has come a long way from its war-torn past. Economically, Germany is a global powerhouse. It's the world's third-largest exporter, with industries ranging from automotive giants like BMW and Volkswagen to cutting-edge technology and green energy. Its focus on engineering and manufacturing excellence has kept it at the forefront of global trade. Politically, Germany has become a leader in diplomacy and peacekeeping. It plays a crucial role in the United Nations, NATO, and climate change initiatives. Unlike the militaristic Germany of the past, today's Germany is known for diplomacy over aggression, often acting as a stabilizing force in global conflicts. Yet, challenges remain. The country faces debates over immigration, economic inequality, and the rise of political extremism. The 2015 refugee crisis saw Germany open its doors to over 1 million asylum seekers, a decision that reshaped its society but also sparked political divides. As the world moves deeper into the 21st century, one question remains: what will Germany's role be in the future? Will it continue leading Europe, or will new challenges force it to reinvent itself once again? Germany has transformed time and time again, from an empire to a democracy, from devastation to economic strength. But what does the future hold for this ever-evolving nation? The world is changing rapidly. New global powers are emerging, technology is reshaping industries, and political landscapes are shifting. Germany must navigate these challenges while maintaining its position as Europe's leader. One of the biggest questions is how Germany will handle its aging population. With one of the lowest birth rates in Europe, its workforce is shrinking, which could impact its economic power. Will it embrace automation and artificial intelligence to fill the gaps? Or will it open its borders further to skilled immigrants? Germany also faces the challenge of energy and sustainability. As one of the pioneers of renewable energy, it has committed to phasing out coal and nuclear power. But can it successfully transition to a completely green economy without harming industries? Politically, Germany's stance on international conflicts and alliances will shape its future. With rising tensions between superpowers like the US, China, and Russia, Germany must carefully balance diplomacy and security. Through all these uncertainties, one thing is clear: Germany is a nation that adapts, evolves, and shapes the world around it. And as history has shown, whatever comes next will not just define Germany, it will impact the entire world. From the medieval tribes of Germania to the industrial giant of today, Germany's story is one of constant transformation. It has seen war, peace, division, and unity, each era shaping the country into what it is now. But history isn't just about the past, it's about understanding how we got here and where we're going. Germany's influence is far from over. Its decisions in economics, politics, and technology will continue to shape the world for decades to come. And if there's one lesson history has taught us, it's that no nation's future is set in stone. Will Germany remain Europe's leader? Will it overcome the challenges ahead? The next chapter is still being written. If you enjoyed this journey through Germany's history, there's so much more to uncover. Want to see how another great nation rose to power? Stay tuned for our next deep dive into the past, only on the Great Chronicles.